Okay, I'm gonna record every one of the meetings, then I'll post them for that week. So make sure it's all good here. So, all right. Were we able to look over the course outline at all, or?
Yeah, I got a chance to look through it.
Okay. So essentially what this, let me pull up one of the, this is our worksheet one. So Sam and Kayla, you've had me as a prof before, so it'll be a little bit similar, but Ryan and Laura, my course, I think the course's Moodle pages are a little different. Mine is exactly the way that I had with the Bible 500. So every week there is a worksheet, and part of that worksheet is consisting of primary and secondary research. That'll be a little bit different, where we did reading and hermeneutics, and then we had our inductive Bible study research on the two passages, Isaiah and then Ephesians 2. This will be similar. So there'll be reading and hermeneutics basically associated with specific ideas within the prophetic literature. So hermeneutics in general, and then reading in the prophetic literature itself. And then, so what you would do is, as before, you would cut and paste for this part, and you would submit that here under primary and secondary research. And then for the inductive interpretation project, which is for us going to be Isaiah 7:1 through 8:3, you're going to cut and paste this. And again, just to remind you, when I ask you to read something, you're just reporting to me that you read however much you read, 100% or whatever. Now, every week there's going to be, I didn't do this for the first class, but every week there is a recommendation for lesson plan work. So what'll be different about this course in relationship to Bible 500 is we didn't do a lesson plan. You're going to do a lesson plan based on Isaiah 7:1 through 8:3, but also in regards to historiography. So the actual lesson plan instructions is in week 8 is when it's due. And so it'll be in the week 8 worksheet. So we're going to write an essay on Amos 7:1 through 8:3, but then also, which will be basically exactly what you did for Isaiah 7, as well as Ephesians 2, Laura and Ryan. And Kayla and Sam, Kayla especially, this should look pretty familiar. It's a rubric that I've used, similar type of rubric I've used in other classes for writing essays, OT Theo and other stuff. So, and then the lesson plan is explained here briefly. And then I've given, and I'm assuming as well from what you did in, I don't know the number, ED or something, where you did some lesson plans, but I also have in the welcome and course information tab, I've got assignment examples, and I've just got a couple of lesson plan examples here, general ones, if you need to refer back to that, but you should probably have all that material yourself. So each week I'll just so again, the lesson plan stuff is recommended. You're not going to put anything for me here. It's just to just kind of help you stay on pace so that you don't have this massive amount of work at the end of the course. Okay. Now, in regards to the way this class essentially is formatted, is we're going to do a lot of reading, again, in hermeneutics, but a lot of reading in the prophets. And again, just for, I explained this a little bit in Bible 500, but the prophetic literature is made up of the former prophets and the latter prophets. And the former prophets is Joshua through Kings. So what we're kind of basing this off of is the Hebrew Bible. And the Hebrew Bible is divided into three. So we have the Torah, which you just did, right? And you guys know the Torah inside and out now, right? So that's good.
Exactly.
And then we have the prophets. And then we've got the writings. So what we're studying in this class is the prophets. And so then we have the former prophets, Joshua through Kings. And then we have the latter prophets, which is Isaiah through the 12. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then Hosea through Malachi. So this is obviously, you know, the Torah is a massive amount of material. This is even more, right? A ton of material. So what we're going to be doing is doing a lot of reading in the prophets, but much of our concentration of our work is going to be in Amos. So we're going to get a good handle on Amos. We'll do work and some other stuff in relationship to some important aspects in the prophetic literature through the reading and then specific discussion questions. But again, much of our focus is going to be in Amos and then really this. So we're going to spend a lot of time here. So what we're going to do in this section here is we're going to do observations, right? We're going to do a structural outline. We're going to do discourse analysis. We're going to do kind of a mini word study, kind of an introductory kind of word study on Nacham, which means to grieve, change the mind. It's very central to this text. And then we're going to do dictionary research. All the things that we did in Bible 500, we're going to apply to this text here. Okay. So kind of in a sense, what we're going to do is kind of get a general sense of the prophetic literature and specific study in Amos. Okay. Any questions about that? Remarks?
All good.
Nothing?
It's a lot
So
of reading.
yeah, there's going to be some reading. So now so on the welcome page, probably already saw this, I have all of our assigned text as ebooks. This one's down the road. This one, Way of Wisdom, there's an essay that I'm having you read in here on Isaiah 14. Excuse me, Isaiah 14. And I also have it as a PDF in here. I'm not supposed to, so mum's the word, right? But students have had real problems with this ebook. The other ones, I don't think we should have many issues with the ebooks. If you do, please contact me ASAP and I'll get that essay in a PDF. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a quiz. The quiz is on week 8. So you can't, I don't know if you can see that. It's not shown right there, but you know exactly what the quiz is. And the quiz looks like this. Now, these dates, so for example, right here, that date is incorrect. So what you need to do over the course of the next few weeks is find the correct date or assign the correct date to the person or event. Now, where you're going to get that information is under this tab here, history quiz. And I say history quiz and historical timelines is all this stuff here. So all these timelines that I have created. Now, we talked a little bit of history with Isaiah 7 and King Ahaz. But all the dates that are on the history quiz match the dates here. Now, what's crucial is that we get is that you're going to be reading other scholars and they're going to be proposing different dates. Now, the dates are typically different from like maybe a couple years, maybe 10 years. The two most debatable dates are Ahaz and Hezekiah. Those are the two most difficult. And we'll go over this a little bit, but I have this top kind of essay here, chronological dates for the reigns of Ahaz and Hezekiah. I go through what are my conclusions. And essentially, I think that there was a time period that Ahaz and Hezekiah, so Hezekiah is Ahaz's son, that they co-reigned for a period. I'm not alone in that theory. The difficulty with that theory is the biblical text doesn't tell us they co-reigned. But it seems like that's the most plausible to make sense of their reigns. So just to kind of give us a reference point here with those two kings and what we did in Bible 500 is that in Isaiah 1 through 39, we can break this section up into 1 through 12, which is dealing with Judah. And then 13 through 23, which is dealing with the nations. And then 24 through 27, which is dealing with the world. And then 28 through 39. And now we're back to Judah. The king here is Ahaz, and the king here is Hezekiah. So you can kind of see how Judah kind of forms an inclusio, if you will, begins and then ends, but so do these two kings. And then the kings don't really factor in here or here. So you got this massive amount of material in Isaiah 1 through 39, but there's not a lot of time span between these events that Isaiah is addressing. Okay. So what you want to do is use my timeline. So again, my dates are going to differ from Matthew's, one of your assigned, that one assigned book. That's one book that I don't have as an ebook, by the way. That book is required, Matthew's book. All the other ones are ebooks. But Matthew's dates will differ. The dates by other authors inside of the dictionary of the historical books, the prophets, will differ. But again, the difference is by a matter of just a few years. But you need to use my dates. And fortunately, right, my dates are correct. So you can be relieved there. But you need to use my dates so that you're able to find the dates that are here and appropriately and properly answer and apply those dates to these events or persons. Okay? So you should a lot of the information will come, especially in the 8th century and 7th century here, timeline in Isaiah and Judah, 8th and 7th century. But then here I have the timeline for the kings and the prophets here. So you can get all these dates, and it shouldn't be too hard, but there might be a date here or there that you might struggle with, and we can go over those all together and make sure we're on the same page. And then we'll take the quiz on the last time we meet. So now I think the positive of this is it kind of helps us put things into categories and to try to assess and determine and then build a framework for when certain individuals are alive and doing things. So like, for example, we got Jeroboam ben Joash, or Jeroboam 2, and then we have Jeroboam 1. And the way that they define them is by their father. Ben means son, so he's the son of Joash, but sometimes they'll just put Jeroboam, right? They won't tell you who this is in relationship to his father. So with Jeroboam 1 is the king who is under and is actually identified as a servant of Solomon, and Jeroboam 2 is the king at the time of Amos. Okay. Any questions on that? So the quiz will look exactly like this. You just need to identify the dates and then just start chipping at memorizing those dates. Okay. Now, let me just show you this thing real quick here, just to kind of help us just real quick. I don't want to belabor this class for you guys, and you're probably exhausted already. Let's see here. So here's this doc chronology of the reigns of Ahaz and Hezekiah. So this would be good to maybe start with. So 930 is the division of the monarchy. So we have a united monarchy with Saul, David, and Solomon. So Saul is the first king, then David, then Solomon. And then these two dates here, the Battle of Karkar at 853, and then at 841, Jehu and the Black Obelisk. What this is showing that Jehu is bowing before Shalmaneser III, an Assyrian king. and showing his service or submission to the Assyrian king. Why are these two dates here? Because these two dates are confirmed by all scholars, biblical and archaeologists. These are two firm dates. And then what these two firm dates provide is then we start working backwards to get at the monarchy, to get at when Solomon reigned. So this would be the end of Solomon's reign. So then we can work back 40 years and get at David. Then we can go back 40 years and get at Saul. Now, we can talk about this later. I argue that Saul probably reigned 20 years. There's nothing in the biblical text that says how long he reigned. Tradition and kind of some texts, and one text in particular in the book of Acts kind of points at 40, but not really. So I'm kind of thinking he reigned 20 years. Now that's kind of up for debate as well, but a lot of scholars would conclude that as well. So then we can work back and then go work back and find the Exodus and work back and go to the patriarchs. And what is problematic about, for a number of things with dating, but when we look at dates or try to find dates, we don't have any dates, numbers in the biblical text. What we have is oftentimes what are called superscriptions in the prophets, and especially in the, like, for example, with Isaiah, there are actually two superscriptions. And in 1:1, it tells us that you have Isaiah as a prophet, Ben Amaz, and that he saw things, he had visions concerning Judah. And then it gives us a list of kings. The list of kings are telling us or giving us a framework for when Isaiah prophesied, but it doesn't say that he's an 8th century prophet who prophesied from 735 to whatever. We have to come up with those numbers. The biblical text doesn't. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, like when we start reading in Joshua through Kings, Joshua doesn't really have any dates. The Pentateuch doesn't really have any dates. Judges, not much. But then when we start getting a little bit into Samuel, and then in particular Kings, we start seeing numbers like King Ahaz reigned 16 years. Doesn't say when he reigned, but it gives us a number like number 16, or a king reigned 40 years, like with David, 40 years with Solomon. So we start getting numbers, and we start getting more and more precision with numbers when we get into Samuel and then really into Kings. Now, for me and a lot of scholars, what's that showing us is that when we start getting precision on numbers of how long a king reigned, that's kind of showing me or telling me that those that are writing the biblical text are around that time, because they actually have some numbers, not again dates, but numbers of how long a king reigned. So what's really interesting is that we get kind of these numbers here again, but when we go like to Genesis, for example, and following, there's a lot of imprecision with numbers. But then we get a lot of numbers and stuff with kings. But then if we go to Revelation, the end of the Bible, it become what we see is there's probably more metaphorical stuff, more symbolism here as well as here, where we start getting more precision and more exacting on what exactly happened here. Because nobody was here and nobody was here or will be there, right? Until the end, right? Does that make sense? So if we've got people writing around here, I'm not saying that you couldn't have had, and you went through this with the Torah, that Moses couldn't have written things down, and he probably did. Deuteronomy specifically talks in those terms. But again, we don't get precision. So like we don't really have names of the Pharaoh or pharaohs in Exodus. Now we do have some, like with Ramses, we've got some city names, but not the pharaohs aren't named. Now that could be because of a lack of historical information, or it could be theological, where one name wants to be presented above all other names, and that's the name Yahweh. But in any event, nobody's here. Writers are here. And so who's ever writing this material in its final form is reflecting back. And there's a lot, and you probably got a lot of this, there's a lot of correlation or parallels that we can see with the tabernacle and Genesis 1, the 7-day creation. There's a lot of parallels with the temple imagery, tabernacle imagery with Genesis 1, 2, and 3. So somebody is looking back from a particular standpoint and looking and writing Genesis and other texts from that perspective. Not saying they didn't have a historical reference, but nobody's there. Nobody's, I don't think Moses is taking notes in the garden, right? With Adam and Eve. Okay. So just with that kind of information here, these are 3 key dates that you could start with. 930 is the division of the monarchy, 853, the Battle of Karkar, 841, and then get that on your history quiz here. So I have 930 here. So here's my divided monarchy. That's 930. The Battle of Karkar. Where is that thing? Oh, here's the Black Obelisk. So 841. And where did I put there it is, Battle of Karkar, 853. So then if you go back 930, go back, so that's the division of the monarchy. So now we can do Solomon, and that would end at 930, and you add then 40 years, so 970 to 930. So here's that date, and that would be Solomon. Then go back another 40 years. So then you're going to go 1010 to 970 will be David. And then for me, it'll be Saul will be 1030 to 1010. So if you can get these 3 numbers fixed in your mind, and then you can start working backwards, that can help with your memorization as well. 40, 40, 20. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. I think so. As I did before in Bible 500, and then Kayla and Sam, this will be a little different. I have a course outline question. I just want you to engage with the course outline objectives and just tell me how you're going to accomplish those learning outcomes. Just it's kind of just, you know, pretty benign question. And that you just need to have that done by Sunday. And then we'll have every week we'll have 2 discussion questions. Now, some of the discussion questions will be directly related to Amos, our inductive biblical passage, Amos 7:1 through 8:3. Now, first discussion question has to do with Jericho. And I'm asking you to read this brief little thing here and then engage with this discussion question. And then our second discussion question has to do with Amos. Now, I'm only asking for you this week to read Amos 3 times, but from your reading, I'm asking you to just present 3 observations. You're not writing any observations down, but here in the discussion question, I'd like for you to present just 3 observations from your reading, and then 2 questions, and then engage with those with each other, what you're seeing in the book of Amos. Does that make sense? So I'm not asking you to observe Amos formally, but I am asking you to just kind of present what you saw in the book of Amos, 3 observations and 2 questions. Okay. Okay. I don't think. Do you have any questions for me? So the same thing that we did before, Wednesday discussion question 1's due, Friday, and then by Sunday respond to 2 others, but Sunday by noon. It always kind of kills me when students respond Sunday at 11:55 p.m. to someone. Never, especially if you ask that person a question. So this is our weight of grading, 30% the reading, inductive, project 35, lesson plan 10, history quiz 5%, discussion questions 20. You do need to make sure that you submit everything in a Word doc. Make sure your name's on there. If you do it in a PDF, I can't assess it. So make sure it's a Word doc. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So we have the course schedule here, but everything's laid out on Moodle, so you don't really need to refer to that. Everything's here on Moodle, week 1, 2, 3, etc. So the worksheets are all due Sunday, and then intermittently is the discussion questions.
And that's worksheet Sunday at noon as well? Or is that just that discussion?
No, that's just for the discussion one. Yeah, not noon,
Okay.
anytime before midnight. Yeah,
Gotcha. Just wanted to make sure.
yeah, yeah. That'd be a little harsh.
I've had stuff due on Fridays before, so it's,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Not in this course, but another like community college class I took
Oh, okay.
before I went to
Okay.
undergrad. So that was rough.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Pretty straightforward. Here makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so when we meet on, let me ask you, is this time good? Mondays at 5:00? Is that good for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay. So we'll just keep doing that. We'll meet on Monday. And then, we'll try to keep it in an hour. If we go over, if you have to leave, go ahead and leave. Again, these aren't required. I'm going to record them and then post them. So the Zoom meetings are really voluntary. They're not part of the course, but I do think that I think they're really beneficial for just being able to communicate better than just being purely online. But again, you're not obligated to, because this is an online program. So, but yeah. So we'll try to, I don't know, we'll try to keep it in an hour again, but we might go over if we want to keep talking, and I'm fine with that. And again, if you have to leave, you can leave. So,
It works for me.
okay, great. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I think we're done.
Perfect.
Thank you for the time, Jim.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, I really look forward to studying with you guys, and hopefully this will be beneficial, and we'll learn a lot about the prophets in general and a lot about Amos. So I think the reason why I chose Amos was partly because of his focus on justice. So to kind of engage with that a little bit, and how, people oftentimes will just automatically assume that Amos is talking to us Christians, but he is an 8th century prophet to northern Israel, the time of the divided monarchy. So we want to take into consideration those ideas. And then also in regards to historiography in the passage we will be looking at, it's quite interesting the way that it's formulated in its final form. We can see, or at least begin to observe, that somebody intentionally put this together, but from maybe different sources, different perspectives, but for one kind of goal. So it'll be kind of helpful to think in terms of historiography, how authors and editors decided to put text together. So,
Looking forward to it.
all right.
All right.
Well, hope I'll be seeing you on the discussion board. And again, if you have any kind of questions, don't hesitate to email me. My email's on the course outline. It's JW Adams. So if you leave that W out, it's going somewhere else. The real Jim Adams will oftentimes forward it to me, but sometimes it will get lost. So make sure that W's in there, and I'll respond back as quickly as I can.
Sounds great.